In this Warmaster battle report, an alliance between the Empire and the Wood Elves will attempt to halt an invasion of their lands by the forces of the Vampire Counts and the Dark Elves. This battle will take place in the Empire province of Ostermark, around the imperial town of Bergenhof. We set up our battlefield to represent the terrain around the town. There is a good mix of cultivated land, dark woodland and barren hills. The background to this battle features the current ruler of the town of Bergenhof, Graf Helmut Dogburgler. The Graf's ancestral home is a tower dominating the roadway leading through Ostermark. The current Graf inherited this property and his title when his great-great-uncle disappeared whilst on campaign to the south, almost 100 years ago. The family inheritance passed to the Graf's great-grandfather and has remained on his side of the family ever since. Unfortunately for Graf Dogburgler, the tower's original owner did not die in battle as was assumed. Instead, whilst fighting on campaign in the cursed province of Sylvania to the south, the original Graf was infected with the curse of vampirism. And the vampire Graf has now returned to his homeland to reclaim his rightful property. To reinforce his claim, the vampire has brought a horde of undead with him, and he's also enlisted the services of some dark elf mercenaries who were previously raiding the Kislev border to the north. Graf Dogburgler has rallied his state troops in defence of the imperial province, but his brave soldiers would certainly be overmatched by the combined might of two enemy armies. Luckily for the Graf, the presence of the invading Dark Elves has stirred the indigenous population of Wood Elves from their slumber in the Griffinwood, and they rally out to see off the invaders. The battle features 4 2,000-point armies. In the top right corner, the Empire will be defending their farmland, whilst in the top left corner the Wood Elves will be emerging from the trees. The vampires and their Dark Elf allies will be invading from the southern edge. Each army has a separate objective. The Vampire Army and the Empire Army are both trying to control the central tower, while the Dark Elves are trying to break the Empire Army in order to carry them off as slaves. Meanwhile, the Wood Elves are trying to break the Dark Elf army in order to cleanse the landscape of their presence. We set a 4-hour time limit on the game, and whichever side has scored the most individual army objectives will be the winner. If there is a tie on objectives, then we go to victory points to determine who has won the battle. The battlefield features 4 hills which are open terrain and allow infantry and artillery on the slopes to claim defended status. There are also 4 woods which can only be entered by infantry and allow them to claim defended status. They're also dense terrain and block line of sight. The individual buildings, including the tower, are designated as impassable terrain. To claim the tower objective, a player must have a unit in base contact with it, and no enemy within 5 centimeters. There are 3 fields which are cultivated ground and can't be entered by chariots or artillery. Charging units also lose their charge attack bonus whilst in a field. There are 4 hedgerows which are linear obstacles. Infantry and artillery immediately behind an obstacle can claim defended status, and obstacles can't be crossed by chariots or artillery. There is 1 pond which we designate as a deep water feature and is therefore impassable. There are also a number of roads which are open ground, and the roadways grant a command bonus to any unit which travels along them in column formation. With the battlefield laid out, it's time to review the armies. The first army is 2,000 points of Vampire Counts. In this game I'll be taking control of the blood-sucking fiends, and I'll be using Steve's standard tournament list with 1 minor tweak. I have to start with 1 Vampire Lord as general, and I must also take 4 units of Skeleton Warriors and 4 units of Zombies at 2,000 points. There are 2 units of Ghouls, 2 units of Graveguard, and 2 units of ethereal host. I take 2 units of fellbats for flyers. There are 4 units of black knights, 2 of whom carry magic swords, and 4 units of dire wolves. I take 3 vampire heroes and mount 1 on the black coach, and there are 2 necromancers with magic items. Breakpoint is 12. The next army are the State Soldiers of Ostermark. For this game, Steve will be taking control of my tournament army. This is 2000 points of Empire with the addition of 2 regiments of renown, the Bearmen of Urslo and Golgfag's Ogres. We are using the trial rules for regiments of renown which were recently run in the London Grand Tournament. We start with the General Helmut Dogburglar, and at 2000 points we must take 4 units of halberdiers and 4 units of crossbowmen. There are 6 units of knights as our mobile strike force, and 1 unit of pistoliers for harassment. We have 2 units of cannon, plus Golgfag's mercenary ogres and the Bearmen of Urslo to bolster our infantry line. There are 2 heroes, 1 mounted on a griffin, and 2 wizards with magic items. Breakpoint is 10. The next army are 2000 points of Dark Elves. I'll be taking control of the Druki in this battle, and I've gone for a slightly more defensive army than I would usually take. We start with 1 general who has the obligatory Sceptre of Sovereignty. We have to take 4 units of spearmen, but I add 2 more to boost the breakpoint, and we also have to take 2 units of Dark Elf crossbows. I restrain myself to 4 units of Cold One Knights, with 2 units of Dark Riders. There are 2 units of Harpies as flyers, and 2 units of Bolt Throwers. I take 2 heroes, 1 mounted on a Manticore, and 1 sorceress with a Dispel Scroll. Breakpoint is 9. Wood Elves. Steve will take control of 2000 points of the Tree Huggers for this battle, and again he's using his standard tournament list. We start by taking 1 general, 4 units of Glade Guard, and 2 units of Dryads, although we add 1 more for a total of 3. There are 4 units of Wild Riders, and 1 unit of Warhawk Riders for flyers. The infantry are boosted by 3 units of Treekin, and also 2 Tree Men. We add a Treeman Ancient hero character, and a Spellweaver wizard with the Dispel Scroll. Breakpoint is 9. As the invading force, the vampires have to deploy first, and they place the bulk of their infantry brigades close to the central tower, which is their main objective. 1 cavalry brigade is placed in column formation on the road to benefit from the special rules, while a 2nd cavalry brigade and the ghouls are deployed to cover the right flank. The Empire now draw up their battle lines amongst the fields and hedgerows of their homeland. On the road deploys a large brigade of cavalry, with the artillery next to them to threaten the open ground around the tower. The mercenary infantry and remaining Empire troops deploy in the centre, with a 2nd Empire cavalry brigade deploying on the left wing. The bulk of the Dark Elf forces deploy on the left flank of the undead line. The Cold One cavalry and infantry brigades should provide enough overwhelming force to take out the Wood Elves. Meanwhile, the Dark Elf artillery and light cavalry deploy mixed between the undead lines. They will cover the advance of the undead troops as they close the distance to the tower. The Wood Elves now deploy their forces, with their main infantry line taking up position next to the Empire on the road. Their cavalry brigade takes up position on the extreme right flank, with the archers taking refuge amongst the woods. Their flyers deploy behind the Empire army. Both armies are now fully arrayed for battle, and for this game we're going to try out a number of alternative rules, mainly focusing around close combat. At the relevant points of the battle, I'll explain in more detail which house rules we are adopting. But for now, the armies are ready to go, with the Evil Alliance setting up in a more compact double line formation, whilst the good guys have a more extended battle line. We roll to see who goes first. The bad guys take the first turn and make a concerted push for the tower with their undead cavalry. The infantry brigades also make good progress and head towards defendable positions. On the right flank, the ghouls take the wood, whilst an undead cavalry brigade advances towards the fields. Dark Elf cavalry and infantry claim the central hill, whilst the expendable direwolves are pushed forward to catch cannonballs. Unfortunately, the Dark Elf general manages to roll a double 6 for his first order, and automatically loses 1 point of command, as he's unable to use the Sceptre of Sovereignty in this case. The characters then move forwards in advance of their units, ready to order them next turn. On the whole, the first turn's orders have gone well, with all brigades making good progress, and the undead capturing the tower. The good guys survey this fast advance and prepare their counter-attack. The Wood Elves make a more cautious advance, with their infantry taking cover in the woodland and the cavalry pushing up on the right flank. The Empire also advance quite slowly, keeping their battle line in formation with the Wood Elves. The mercenary infantry lead the Empire advance but can't quite reach the defendable obstacle. However, on the Empire left flank, 2 units of knights manage a 2-order charge into the direwolves. This engagement is a good example of how to use expendable units to bait an enemy charge. The knights will kill off the direwolves but will suffer damage in return, and then I can countercharge with my black knights in my turn. Near the tower, a 3rd unit of Empire Knights manages to break off from their brigade and charges the flank of the direwolves on the road. By doing this, the Empire player has also removed the direwolves as a viable target for the cannon. A unit of Pistoliers breaks off from its parent brigade and also charges the front of the engaged direwolves. Characters then move forwards of their units ready for next turn's orders, and wizards attempt to cast their spells. On the central hill, a unit of Cold One Knights is hit with a weird enchantment from the Empire, whilst a unit of Treekin is granted defended status from the Tree Singing spell. The Empire cannon can now target the direwolves adjacent to the tower. The cannonballs only inflict 2 hits on the direwolves, but the bounce manages to inflict 4 hits on the knights behind. The knights lose a stand and are driven back out of their formation and into the zombies. In combat, the direwolves near the tower are easily overwhelmed by the double charge of the Empire cavalry. Both Empire units then make an advance move, with the knights engaging some black knights and the damaged Pistoliers engaging the 2nd unit of direwolves. However, mainly due to the presence of the vampire on a black coach who was forced to join the black knights, the undead end up winning the engagement over 2 rounds of combat. The Empire cavalry is forced to retreat, and the undead units pursue them and lap around to finish them off next turn. On the Empire left flank, the charging knights easily destroy the direwolves, although over 2 rounds of combat the Empire do lose a stand themselves. The wolves have to retreat backwards, and the black knights decide to make way to allow them room. Because the knights wiped out the wolves within 2 rounds of combat, they can now advance into the black knights. However, the Black Knights prove to be a more challenging opponent, and the combat ends in a draw. The Black Knights then fall back onto the hill, whilst the Empire Knights fall back towards the wood. When repositioning his knights, the Empire player is keen to ensure that they don't enter the line of sight of the ghouls, which prevents an initiative charge next turn. At the start of turn 2, a unit of Cold One Knights is within initiative range of the engaged Pistoliers, so they make a charge down off the hill. Flying units then home back towards characters, with the Harpies going first, and then the Fell Bats. On the undead right flank, a Vampire orders 2 units of Black Knights to charge the Empire Knights that fought them last turn, whilst the Ghouls are ordered to move out of the wood and block the line of retreat for the Knights. A unit of Harpies is then sent behind the Empire lines to impose the -1 command penalty, whilst the Dark Elf hero manages a 3-order brigade move on the Dark Elf artillery, who are now within range of the Empire lines. In the centre, undead infantry brigades move forwards, with the ethereal host taking refuge behind the hedgerows and the zombies claiming the tower. Dark Elf cavalry moves down off the hill, but the order to get them to charge the Empire cavalry fails. And on the Dark Elf left flank, infantry brigades take refuge in the nearby woods. More flying units then land behind the Wood Elf lines, threatening their own flyers, and then characters move forwards of the units ready for next turn's orders. In the shooting phase, the Dark Elf artillery targets the Ogres and manage to inflict 6 hits. The Ogres oblige them by failing all their armour saves, and then the drive back roll is sufficient to rout the entire unit. In combat, the charging Black Knights manage to beat the Empire Knights in the first round of combat. The Knights are forced to retreat into the Ghouls behind them, and this is where we're going to try out an experimental rule for combat. Ordinarily, stands that are forced to retreat from combat into enemy stands are removed as casualties. However, with our experimental house rule, instead of being destroyed, the retreating Knights are automatically confused when they make contact with the Ghouls. The Ghouls are then drawn into the second round of combat, and the Black Knights can pursue the retreating Knights and claim their full pursuit bonuses for the distance they should have retreated. In the second round of combat, with both enemy stands to their rear and confused status, the Empire Knights are reduced to a single attack. They lose combat and retreat again, but don't actually move due to the Ghouls behind them. So although they've lost, the Empire Knights have survived being surrounded on all sides, and have effectively locked in place 3 undead units who now have to stay in the combat to finish them off. In the combat by the tower, the remaining Empire Knights are killed off by the Black Knights, while the Pistoliers are likewise destroyed by the charging Cold One Knights. The victorious undead units then fall back in good order, and we employ another house rule for combat, where units falling back must fall back from the line of combat where they had the most number of stands engaged with the enemy. And although this has no effect on the Cold Ones or the Direwolves, it does mean that the Black Knights have to fall back towards their own board edge, instead of going sideways. So this turn, the Evil Alliance counterattack has caused significant losses to the Empire cavalry force, and the tower remains firmly in undead hands. With the Wood Elves still yet to engage, how will the good guys respond? In their second turn, the Wood Elves spring into action with a strong flanking manoeuvre on their right with the Wood Elf Cavalry Brigade. 1 unit of Wild Riders manages a flank charge into the Cold One Knights. Meanwhile, the Warhawks home back out of danger and are then ordered to land behind the Harpies. The Glade Guard Brigade in the woods turns around to target the Harpies with their missile fire, and in the centre the Empire Artillery Brigade does a 180 turn to target the Fell Bats in their rear. Elsewhere, the Empire orders fail this turn, with their remaining cavalry unable to engage the enemy Cold Ones, and the Empire Infantry unwilling to take on the enemy undead defended behind the hedgerows. In shooting, the Glade Guard managed to drive the Harpies back out of initiative range with their bow fire, whilst the cannon plus crossbowmen barrage the Fell Bats, reducing them to a single stand and driving them off the board edge. This is too much for the unit of bats, and they disappear for good. Bowfire from the crossbowmen and warhawks is sufficient to drive the Harpies into confusion. Moving to combat, the Empire Knights that are surrounded manage to recover from their confusion and fight back. However, the Black Knight's armour proves too thick, and the Empire Knights are cut down in short order for no losses. The undead units then fall back in good order, again using the house rule that they must fall back from the line of combat where they had the most stands touching. A Treeman Ancient joins the combat between the Wild Riders and the Cold Ones, and the Dark Elf cavalry is quickly cut down for no losses to the Wood Elves. The Wild Riders then advance into the flank of a second unit of Cold Ones. Again, that unit suffers heavy losses and has to retreat into a friendly unit. Their friends refuse to make way, and this would ordinarily destroy the wounded Cold Ones. However, using our house rule, the surviving Cold One stand is not destroyed but instead confused. Although this makes little difference to the outcome, as the surviving stand is quickly cut down in the second round of combat. The victorious Wood Elves can then make a fallback move, and they take up position behind the Cold Ones, touching the hill. So the good guys' counterattack has been partially successful, with the Wood Elves in particular removing 2 Cold One units for no loss. However, the Empire have failed to capitalise on their early gains. So will the bad guys be able to exploit this loss of momentum? At the start of their third turn, the Evil Alliance homes back the confused Harpies away from the Warhawks. The Black Knights near the tower are ordered to charge into the Wood Elves to their left and into the Empire Knights ahead of them. A Dark Elf hero on Manticore also orders the remaining Cold One Knights to charge the Empire Knights. The order fails with a blunder, so the General's Sceptre of Sovereignty kicks into action and the order succeeds. Undead and Dark Elf heavy cavalry thunder into the Empire Knights. On the right flank, Black Knights are ordered forwards, whilst the Dark Rider light cavalry are ordered as 2 separate units to charge the good guy lines. One unit of Dark Riders catches the Warhawks in the flank, whilst the second unit charges into the Halberdiers. The main undead infantry line is ordered forwards from their defended position to engage the Marauders. Fellbats are then ordered to land behind the enemy cannon, which coincidentally will block the line of retreat for the Empire Knights. The Dark Elf General finally manages to get the Dark Elf Spearmen Brigade up onto the hill, where they can flank charge into the Wild Riders. In the centre, the zombies begin to manoeuvre around the tower, whilst the Skeleton Warrior Brigade takes up a defended position on top of a hill. In Magic, a Dark Elf Sorceress casts Dominion on a unit of Wild Riders, preventing them from charging next turn. And in combat, the Dark Riders successfully cut down the Warhawks by charging their flank. They then get an advance move into the flank of the Crossbows and Halberdiers, but the infantry stand and shoot and fight back well, driving the cavalry off. The second unit of Dark Riders manages to destroy the Halberdiers that they charged, but lose a stand in the process. In combat, the Bearmen sustain 7 unsaved hits from the charging ethereal host. But despite their terror, the Bearmen also fight back with 7 attacks and land every single hit. Therefore, the undead only manage to win this combat due to the greater level of support. The Empire units must retreat and are pursued by the undead, and in the second round of combat the Bearmen are wiped out, although the ethereal host also sustains heavy losses. The surviving Halberdiers retreat, and the undead pursue them and lock into combat for next turn, with 2 undead units falling back in good order. With terror-causing characters joining the cavalry battle over the road, the engagement is particularly bloody. But whilst one unit of Empire Knights survives relatively unscathed, the other 2 units take very heavy losses and are unable to wound the Dark Elf Cold Ones in return. The Empire Knights have to retreat, with one unit making contact with the Fellbats and becoming confused, as per our house rule. In the second round of combat, the Cold One units do suffer some losses, but one unit of Empire Knights is wiped out, and the other 2 units are reduced to 2 stands each. Meanwhile, the Wild Riders that have been caught between infantry and cavalry also suffer heavy losses and have to retreat. The victorious bad guy units pursue them and wipe them out, before falling back in good order, with the infantry taking up position atop the hill once more. This turn has seen a big swing in favour of the bad guys, as the Empire are now very close to breaking. But the good guys are not out of the fight yet. With the time limit on the battle fast approaching, the Wood Elves need to take decisive action. They begin with a mass charge of forest spirits out of the woods and into the flank of the engaged Cold One Knights. More forest spirits then charge into the Dark Elf infantry, which thought the woods was safe. A tree man gets a flank charge onto the surviving stand of Black Knights near the hill, and the remaining Wild Rider cavalry begin an epic flanking manoeuvre into the rear of the Dark Elf lines. Their charge order succeeds, and 2 units of Wild Riders make contact with the Dark Elf infantry atop the hill. They also contact the Dark Elf general, forcing him to join a unit. The final unit of Wild Riders is ordered to move behind the engaged Dark Elf infantry in the woods. The Glade Guards then move out of their woods into a prime shooting line to target the Harpies. The surviving Empire infantry and artillery brigades then turn back around to target nearby undead units with shooting. In Magic, an Empire wizard casts Weird Enchantment on the Cold Ones and their attendant Manticore character, stripping them of terror and causing them to suffer terror against the Empire Knights. The massed archery of the Glade Guard is sufficient to remove 2 stands of Harpies and drive them away. The drive-back roll pushes the Harpies all the way back behind the Empire cannon. Empire crossbows succeed in driving back a unit of Dark Riders and confusing them. And then the Empire cannon plus remaining crossbowmen cause sufficient hits on the unengaged ethereal host to destroy the entire unit. The charge of the forest spirits into the flank of the Cold Ones does enough damage to kill the entire unit. The victorious Wood Elves then advance into the second unit of Cold Ones and the Manticore hero and wipe them out as well. Although 1 unit of Empire Knights is brought down by the Black Knights, the charge of the Wood Elves has inflicted significant losses to the Dark Elves this turn, and the Black Knights are now stranded and surrounded by enemies. The Wood Elf cavalry charging the defended spearmen on the hill manage to win combat and push their opponents back. The victorious Wood Elves pursue their retreating enemy, and in the second round of combat they force Dark Elf infantry stands to retreat into each other, causing confusion as per our house rule. The Wood Elf cavalry pursue again and lock the Dark Elves in ongoing combat next turn. The Tree Man is also victorious in combat and wipes out the Black Knight stand. He then advances into the other brigade of Dark Elf spearmen on the hill, containing the general. Over 2 rounds of combat, the Dark Elf spearmen lose another 2 stands, and the Tree Man suffers no losses. The Dark Elf general is now trapped in combat in his unit of spearmen. Meanwhile, the infantry battle within the woods ends in a stalemate, with the Treekin losing a single stand. In the centre, the final stands of halberdiers are cut down by the undead infantry, and this causes the Empire army to reach its breakpoint and it is forced to withdraw. At the end of turn 3, the time limit for the game is up, so the battle ends and we work out who has won. So by capturing the tower and breaking the Empire, the bad guys have won this battle. However, should we have had sufficient time to play a 4th turn, the Wood Elves would certainly have forced the Dark Elves to withdraw by killing their general. So the game was not as one-sided as it may appear. We both enjoyed trialling the alternate house rules for close combats, especially the rule that prevents units forced to retreat into enemy from being destroyed and instead confuses them. Although units that are surrounded by enemies in combat will be defeated, it at least gives them a chance to inflict some damage on the enemy. And more importantly, it reduces the effectiveness of the tactic of landing flyers behind an engaged enemy in order to destroy them, which often causes great consternation, especially to new players. I think that this battle showcased the tactic of using expendable units to bait the enemy into unfavourable charges, but also highlighted the importance of setting up flank charges, especially with your cavalry. As always, thank you for watching, and let us know what you think of the trial rules we've showcased in this battle in the comments below.